Hello viewers. Firstly, let me say a huge thank you for all the support recently. I never thought I'd get to 10 subs, let alone 200. It's surreal having this many people watching my videos. But let's aim higher. I've got some really cool stuff planned, especially for when I hit 1000 subs. If you want updates on that, join my Discord, link in the description. With that said, welcome back to another hardcore Deathless run. In the last video, flying was requested in the comments, so flying is what we shall use. I'm actually really looking forward to this. There are loads of really cool flying types in Sinnoh. With the best regional bird Staraptor, and one of my personal favourite Pokemon, Altaria. For the run as a whole, I think Rock and possibly Candice will be the hardest fights. Though you should put your own predictions in the comments below. The rules will be mostly the same as the last videos, however, some things must change for this run. Firstly, I'm banning Gyarados. We already saw it last run, and if we were to use it again, everything after Gym 2 would be exactly the same. The second change, I'll discuss very soon. With that all said, let's get into this run. To start the run, I pick up a Turtwig. This will give Barry an Infernape, which, while weak to flying, is the scariest of the 3 starters in my opinion. Then, we pretty quickly replace Turtwig with our first flying type, Starly. Finally, I get my last encounter before Rock, a Zubat. With both my new team members, we can pretty comfortably take out the second rival fight. Moving on to Rock. This was the second rule change for this run. Well, really more of a rule break, but more on that in a bit. I completely missed while playing through this run that you could get a Beautifly before Rock. I completely forgot that you can encounter Wurmple just north of Jubilife. In fact, I only realised this while talking to Thomas J in the comments of my last video, so thank you for catching that. Therefore, I've gone back and recorded this fight again to show how it should have gone if I had caught myself a Beautifly. Basically, it becomes pretty simple, and if I'd kept Growl on Staravia, it would have been easy. The only way to lose becomes Rock getting a crit, which I would have been perfectly happy resetting for. Now though, we have to say goodbye Butterfree, or at least the Hoenn clone of you, as unfortunately, I didn't see this while playing through the run. Hence the rule break. I thought I only had access to Staravia and Zubat. That means I only have these few moves, and as you can see, all that's really available and somewhat alright for me to do is cheating the fight with double teams. Now I'll be the first to admit, this is extremely dumb and just inconsistent. It could have taken anywhere between 1 and hundreds of attempts for me to beat this, so I decided to let myself save scum for this fight. Partly to avoid a lottery of the fight massively increasing the attempt count, and partly to save time, as it takes me about 30 minutes or so to get back to the Rock fight, and if it took say 10 attempts, that's already 5 hours gone. The final point to that being, that for my run, I also wouldn't have changed my team at all, as I decided to try the brute force with double teams, and I didn't know Beautifly existed. Eventually, I do manage to get the win, but it took me 7 attempts, so feel free to add those 7 to the total attempts if you want to. All in all, this is a lesson in needing to properly check which Pokemon are available for these runs. So hopefully in the future, I'll have less fights that require dumb luck to beat. However, if there is another fight like this that requires double team RNG, or even needs a few crits to win without death, I may consider save scumming again. Only as a last resort of course, and I will let you guys know. However, I am trying to beat the game with all Pokemon in a hardcore Nuzlocke Deathless, and some types just really cannot do that well. Technically, this run isn't a proper Nuzlocke. However, I also save after I beat Rock, so that every time I do wipe, I can reset to after I've beaten him again, and not lose more time to a dumb RNG gatekeeper fight. Basically consider everything after Rock actually a Nuzlocke. With the tedium of Rock out the way, we can move on to some really fun fights. Firstly, it's Mars. I get to use some actual strategy for this one. I lead with a Zubat so that we avoid a Toxic from her Zubat. Then through just being a higher level, we pretty easily take it out over a few turns. Now for her dreaded Fat Cat though. But we have quite a few advantages. Firstly, we dodge her Fake Out's flinch by swapping to our Staravia, which also happens to give us the free Intimidate, meaning we can take a few more hits. I then follow up with one more Growl as it still does quite a bit of damage. Next turn, I use the super interesting move Pluck. It's got the same base power as Wing Attack, but it lets us steal her berry, meaning we get some extra healing, almost going back up to full HP with our own Orange Berry as well. From here, 2 more returns let us win the fight despite her managing to land a crit. We do only just survive with 1 HP, but that was 100% calculated. It's why we got the double attack downs and the double berry recovery. Couldn't possibly have been a bit lucky that we survived. Not at all. Finally, we can get some new Pokemon on the team. With Mars beaten, we can now catch a Drifloon after changing the time to a Friday. In addition to that, the level cap has been raised, so we can now evolve our Zubat into a Golbat. The next gym leader is Gardenia, but with her using grass types, it's a pretty simple fight. I use Golbat as it has the 4 times resistance, and after a few wing attacks, we easily sweep through her team. Defeating her also levels up Golbat, and as it's a friendship evolution, I can already evolve it. Let's welcome Crobat to the team. It's not the only new member though, as we also catch a Hoot Hoot. I might have missed this one when I was planning for this run, so I'm not sure how useful it'll end up being, but more team members can't be bad. Jupiter is next. Her Zubat isn't much of a threat, our Crobat is just way better than that Pokemon. However, Skuntank is always something to respect in these runs. Night Slash crits often. For this particular playthrough though, we get pretty insane confusion luck. It does get a Night Slash on our Crobat, so to play around the crit I swap out. After that though, the only Pokemon Skuntank hits is, well, itself. With another boss down, our team can get that much bigger again. Cynthia gives us an egg which will soon be a Togekiss. I'm also able to catch a Gligar, which will be instrumental to winning this run a little bit later. Finally, I go and pick up the Earthquake TM. Then it's time for Fantina. Now Fantina is always a fight to play carefully. She doesn't do insane damage, her Pokemon aren't that tanky. However, she loves to cause confusion and sleep. Either one of these could lose the run, but sleep is probably the most dangerous. So most of my team gets a Chesto Berry as we go into the fight. Honestly, we get off to a great start. I managed to trade her Duskull for a burn on Crobat, then thanks to a combination of plucking Miss Magius' Citrus Berry and Staravia's own Orange Berry, we cleanly take down her Miss Magius. Now it's just her Haunter. If we take a look at its moveset, so long as we don't attack, it can't hurt Staravia. So I'm just going to stall out for the guaranteed win. Or what should have been the guaranteed win. Over the course of many turns, it manages to take out Staravia, sort of. After Staravia woke up the second time, it was confused. So we hit ourselves and faint. Thus this attempt is over, even if her Haunter didn't technically get the KO. However though, getting back to this point from after we've beaten Rock is pretty simple. The only real difference is that the fights go even cleaner, with Mars's Purugly being the most notable, as it doesn't do anywhere near as much damage as last time, because it doesn't get the crit. I get back to Fantina again, and this time shows what I was afraid of for the first time. Confusion tears apart my team. Staravia and Noctowl both only get to attack themselves, and Gligar got super low from taking out Duskull. I'm at the point where I can stay in with Noctowl and just straight up lose, or swap Crobat into a Psychic type attack, which will likely take it out. Still, the first option is the guaranteed loss, so I swap out, and take just under half HP from one attack. The only way left to win this fight is a Hail Mary, so I go for my own Confuse Ray. First turn, it hits itself. Second turn, fight causes a flinch. Third turn, we take it out. After multiple turns of hitting ourselves, at least we get some good luck at the end. Finally for a Haunter, I could again try to stall it out with normal types, which I might have done if Crobat had taken 2 hits from Miss Magius. However, I'm pretty sure we can take a hit here, so I'm not that worried. I attack him with a Bite, and it's actually a one-shot, so we just win the fight. After beating Fantina, Togepi also hatches just before we leave Hearthome. Togetic is a friendship evolution, so we will have it as part of the team soon. However, first, it's time for Maylene, who just so happens to use fighting types. So believe it or not, she's pretty easy to beat for our flying types. Her Lucario is by far the scariest Pokemon she has. It does nearly take out Staravia, as I get too greedy for a Pluck, which was trying to get a berry that she also doesn't have. Oops. That mistake aside though, it's really not close. A few more swaps later, and Gligar gets in an Earthquake, taking out Lucario. So after that comes the rival fight before Wake. I didn't show the Hearthome one, as these two fights are very similar. In fact, this one goes almost the same way. That is, that for this point in the run, Crobat just has insanely good stats. Plus flying is very good against Barry. Maybe I should have let him have Piplup as his starter, as Empoleon at least resists flying. Though I still think Infernape is the hardest, as it's the most likely to get a knockout. For this fight, I let my own Staravia take out his Staravia. Therefore, for his next Pokemon, I can send out my Crobat and it will have dodged the Intimidate. After that, Crobat goes on to beat both his Buizel and Monferno. We do end up very low against Monferno, and we might have accidentally played into a crit. Fortunately, we aren't punished this time. Finally, it's his Roselia, and while we do have a 4x resistance, I don't want to risk losing the run, so it's out to Noctowl who finishes off the fight. Overall, a little bit more interesting than the Hearthome battle, mostly because I played a little sloppy. Up next, it's an interesting battle. How will we deal with Wake? He brings quite a bit of ice coverage on some really fast and really hard hitting attackers. If he gets a crit, we'll just straight up lose. However, we have options. Togepi and Staravia both evolve. I have Togetic learn Shockwave for coverage. Finally, and most importantly, Drifloon picks up Baton Pass, which is going to be super important for the rest of this run. Firstly, we lead with Togetic. Using a Yawn Protect combo, we can guarantee the sleep on Gyarados even for a crit. Fortunately, we aren't that unlucky. It's then time for a bunch of swaps trying to make his Gyarados as weak as possible. After all the swapping is done, Gyarados is asleep at -2 attack, and we have a Reflect up. I swap into Drifblim. Now it might not be the most exciting, but setting up stats, then baton passing them is very effective. Even though Drifblim doesn't have any really great setup moves, outside of maybe Ominous Wind. However, it does have access to Minimize, which is a great way to max out our evasion. I also get a lot of defense ups with Stockpile, then to be even safer, I swap these stats to Togetic, who has Roost for recovery. With maxed evasion though, we barely get hit, as I take out both his Gyarados and Floatzel. Finally, it's his Quagsire. We can't hit it with Shockwave, so I get the free sleep with Yawn, then swap back out to slowly take his Quagsire out. Though it's only slowly due to his potion abuse. Minimize Baton Pass is going to be a big part of our strategy going forward. Abusing evasion is really powerful. Granted, evasion spam might be a little cheap, however this is a Deathless run, so I think anything goes. The next battle for us is the first Cyrus fight, though Staraptor easily takes out all 3 of his Pokemon without any real difficulty. So on to the next rival fight. This one is always a bit of a tough one in Platinum, but it's time to bring out our cheese. I lead with Togetic to sleep his Staraptor, then swap out to Drifblim. We get as small as possible and get some defense ups, then pass this to Gliscor, who goes on to sweep Barry's whole team. Like my ex would say, small but mighty. Wonder why she left. Anyway, Byron is next. But this time Gliscor can sweep without any setup at all. Remember when I said it'd be instrumental to winning the run? With Byron now beaten, I can go through Iron Island to get a shiny stone, letting me evolve Togetic. Now let's move on to Candice. This one could get dicey. No Pokemon we have can really deal well with her whole team. Staraptor, while pretty good, gets outsped and can't hit Frostlass. On the other hand, Togekiss has the tankiness to tank a few ice hits, but can't hit back with great damage. especially as I want to keep the moves it has. Of course I want to set up with Drifblim, but that's a pretty hard task to do, as well Drifblim can't take that many hits. And even setting up on her sleeping Sneasel is dangerous. Luckily for me though, it only does physical damage. Finally, before we start the fight, we do have one new team member, Altaria. It's 4 times weak to ice, which is terrible of course, but we do now have Dragon Dance on the team, which finally gives us a really good Pokemon to pass evasion to. Speaking of Baton Pass, I also go and pick up the Substitute TM, which, fun fact, you can actually pass with Baton Pass. So Altaria should be able to take another hit. We are going to go for the setup play for this fight, but we're going to be as careful as we can be. Honestly, I don't think we're all that consistent for this fight. An unlucky crit could end it. On the flip side, we just don't have a great Pokemon available to us as far as I can see. Honestly, the best flying type for this would be Gyarados, but of course it's banned. So let's just give this our best shot. I lead with Togekiss, who is holding a Light Clay. We're going to use screens to help us set up. I go for the first turn Reflect into a second turn Yawn. The order is specific so that we can max the amount of sleeping turns Sneasel has. Then I swap to Staraptor to get the Intimidate. I do it again, getting Sneasel to -2 attack. This uses up most of my Reflect turns, so it's back out to Togekiss to heal up, Reflect again, then Sleep Sneasel. We're now in a really good spot to set up Drifblim. We could juggle the Intimidates again, but we're already going to tank enough hits to fully set up, unless we get crit, and more minus attacks won't change that. This attempt, we get lucky. Sneasel fails to crit us, and we get to fully set up with Drifblim. Pass it to Altaria, who then fully sets up 6 Dragon Dances. With this much attack and speed, we can't not go on to one-shot her whole team. Except for her Piloswine, that actually lands a hit with Stone Edge, oh god. How did we not dodge that? Our defense ups come in clutch though. We do just tank the hit. But again, a crit with hail damage might have been run over, and it is a high crit rate move. After that close shave though, it doesn't land another hit, and despite Candice's full restore, we win this battle. As an aside, let me know how you're enjoying the video up to this point. I know I'm being a lot less in depth with the battles for this run, but a lot of it is so much just setting up evasion, and then passing it to someone else and having them full sweep. There isn't too much to talk about as most of the battles are very similar. I could see this being a bit more boring to watch, as to my mind playing perfectly for these fights is setting up that evasion and passing it on. Hopefully you're still enjoying the run. If you aren't, next video will be a bit more traditional, not a Deathless Nuzlocke. Hopefully the fights will end up being a bit less repetitive than this run. Moving on though, if we can beat Ice, we can beat most everyone now using the exact same strategy. Both Cyrus 2 and the Spear Pillar double battle end up being very similar, so we'll skip over them. After those comes Cyrus 3. This is going to be a tough one. We can't just set up Drifblim on his first Pokemon, as it's a Houndoom which hits really hard and uses special attacks which I can't lower that well. That is, as I'm saving Captivate for Cynthia. Outside of a lot of lucky minimized dodges, Drifblim isn't an option early on in the fight. I could take out Houndoom easily enough with a close combat from Staraptor, but that'll probably guarantee that his Weavile would come out, which will outspeed and almost certainly one-shot with the defense drop. Though again, Staraptor could easily take it out with a close combat. If only we could tank at least one hit. Huh. Just tank one hit. It turns out there is a way to do that in this gen. I need to pick up one of the type weakening berries, as it will make this fight as consistent as it can be. To get them, all I need to do is talk to this lady, change the date, then talk again. So getting them is actually pretty quick. After a little while, I end up with a Yache berry, or however you pronounce that, which reduces the power of an ice type attack when it hits. So by giving this to Staraptor, even with the defense drop from close combat, we will tank an Ice Punch, provided we dodge a crit. Let's start the fight with Cyrus. He leads with Houndoom, but as predicted, close combat takes it down. It all comes down to his Weavile. Can we tank a hit even with the defense drop? Weavile hits, Yache Berry activates, we survive. Just barely though. That lets us land a close combat, taking out his Weavile. What now follows is an extremely long and stally grind against his Gyarados. It's a super strong attacker with an ice attack, however it is physical. Therefore I can lower its attack with Staraptor, and after that I swap to Togekiss. Using its bulk and roost spam, I'm able to slowly PP stall all of Ice Fang away. With it now out of Ice Fangs, I can go into Drifblim while Gyarados is asleep and on really low attack. Finally, I fully set up with Drifblim, baton pass all the buffs to Altaria, who then gets max Dragon Dances up, which allows me to sweep Cyrus's team. That was a hard one. Without the berries, the fight would be inconsistent at best, most likely a loss. To set up with Drifblim, I would have needed evasion dodges. However, this shows how all the remaining tough battles will go, so I'll be really quick for the last few fights. First up, it's Volkner, who uses electric types. Should be a challenge, right? Right? Well, Gliscor just so happens to exist, therefore Volkner isn't a challenge at all. Gliscor really is super important for this run, though you don't get to see many of his fights because they're just so one-sided. Somehow this battle reignited Volkner's passion for Pokemon battling, when he only gets to attack once. I'm always really confused by Volkner. He seems to hate Pokemon battling until you absolutely wreck him at it. Fair enough though. Following on from Volkner, it's the last rival fight, which goes the same way as Cyrus 3, only it's much easier to set up on his Pokemon. Aron is next, and well, he uses bug types. This should be completely easy, right? Actually not entirely true. I take out his Yanmega easily enough, but then he sends out Drapion, which knows Ice Fang. So to beat it safely, I stall out, lowering Drapion's attack. With it now mostly harmless and asleep, I swap to Drifblim and set up Evasion and Substitute. I pass these to Gliscor, and after a few Swords Dances, it's now strong enough to go on to one-shot all of Aron's team. Second in the Elite Four, it's Bertha. For this fight, I saved the TM for Grass Knot. Teaching this to Togekiss, I'm able to cleanly sweep most of Bertha's team, until a Gliscor comes out and lands a critical Ice Fang. Am I really going to lose here and now, this close to the end, to a crit? Not if Togekiss has anything to say about it. He survives on just 1 HP, though that's one more than we need. That was a close shave, but now Gliscor goes to sleep, and I get to heal up with a few roosts. Though I then send in Staraptor, who finishes off the battle, so I don't know why I roosted. But whatever, we're on to Flint now. This one, you've already seen before. I fully set up Altaria, who then goes on to one-shot all of Flint's team. Finally for the Elite Four, it's Lucian. This one goes a bit awkward. I do my usual of trying to set up with Drifblim, but I take too much damage and can't really set up anymore. I baton pass what little I do have to Gliscor, who with a Swords Dance is able to beat Mr. Mime, then Espeon, and then leave Bronzong on really low HP. However, I can't keep using Gliscor here, as it will definitely be outsped by Alakazam and maybe even his Gallade, and they will both one-shot it at this health. Therefore, I swap to Togekiss to get the sleep on Bronzong, then swap to Altaria to set up 3 Dragon Dances, which will let me outspeed and one-shot Lucian's last few Pokemon. With that done, last for this run is Cynthia. However, if you've seen enough of my videos, you should actually know how this goes. I spam Captivates on Spiritomb, which completely cripples its damage. After that, I can fully set up with Drifblim, pass this to Altaria, fully set up Dragon Dances, then go on to sweep Cynthia's entire team. That was easy. So much so that for future runs, maybe Baton Pass should be banned. It does feel too much if you can have max evasion and a substitute for free on any Pokemon you want. Though on the other hand, it is a pretty uncommon move, so it might not come up that much. Definitely something you guys should give me feedback on in the comments. Though in my opinion, these are the Deathless hardcore runs, so I think any strategy should be allowed. We proceed forward into the Hall of Fame, which means it's time to thank my patrons. You guys really do help me to make these videos, which in turn, I really hope you guys enjoy. As an aside, if you're interested in becoming a patron, the link is in the description below. Honestly, I can't promise you'll get that much extra out of it for now, but it is super helpful for me and I thank everyone who does even consider it. Finally guys, I'm blown away by how the channel is currently growing. I'm really happy so many more of you have joined recently, and hope we'll get to 1000 soon. Upon doing so, I've got a really fun run planned that I would love to stream if I can find the time. If you'd be interested in seeing that, follow me on Twitch, again in the description below, and join my Discord. I'll try and let you guys know more about it close to the time. Okay guys, I think that's everything I want to plug. Oh, the channel, of course. Like or dislike if you did, leave a comment, subscribe to see more occasionally. Finally though, you guys are all awesome. Thank you so much for watching, let me know what you'd like to see next, and have a great rest of your day.